What's up guys? In today's episode, I'm going to show you how we went from this to this. And don't worry, if you don't want your room looking like a planetarium all the time, you can easily switch it to a classier look anytime you want. Now, I'll just start out by saying there's probably 1,000 different ways you could have gone about doing this. I know a lot of people are going to say, oh, you didn't need to use 2x4s, you could have used, 1x4s or something thinner, and yeah, you're definitely right. I just decided to go with thicker lumber so that I could use heavy-duty construction screws and be comfortable about the strength of the structure. So what you see me doing here is drilling construction screws through the 2x4 into the studs of the walls underneath. And here I was lucky because I was working on an unfinished room, so I knew where the studs were. You could have just as easily done this to a finished room as long as you had a stud finder. And then you're just going to work your way around the whole perimeter of the room. Now that I've got that done, I'm going to go ahead and crack open a new bucket of all-purpose joint compound. I did get this at one of the big box stores. They have other brands of it, but I mean most of it does the same thing. If you're in a rush, you could use the stuff that sets a lot quicker that you mix yourself in a bag, but I've got plenty of time on my hands here and I don't really feel like dealing with all that dust. Anyways, you don't really want to be working out of the bucket, so get yourself a little drywall mud pan. You're going to take a little spatula, load that up, and then that's easier to get up on that ladder and work with. Alright, now that you've got that, you're just going to take your spatula and your drywall mud and you're going to cover any imperfections in the 2x4. That could be screw holes, nail holes, knots from the wood itself. You can glob it on at first, but you're going to want to smooth it out into a nice even layer all the way across. The next drywall tool you're really going to want to have is a corner tool. You can see this plastic one I've got here. It makes a nice little 90-degree angle, and you're going to spread some of that mud on the very tip of that angle, and then you're going to smush it into the crease between the 2x4 and where the drywall meets. And after this mud dries, and you sand it a little bit, this is what's going to give the impression of a seamless flow, so you can't see the stack up between the wood and the drywall and all the different layers. Now that I've got the mud all sanded down and smoothed out, there's very little imperfection to the 2x4. I'm going to roll over some primer on top of this because I want a nice white primer to reflect all the different colors of the RGB LED light. You could go with a different color to match your room. I was just worried about that affecting how the light would show up. Alright, the next step in this is probably one of the harder ones if you're working alone like I was. If you have a buddy to come over and hold the other side of this, I would definitely recommend that. What I'm doing is I'm adding a 2x6 piece of lumber to the bottom side of the 2x4s that we just installed. One thing to note, you want your breaks to be staggered, meaning don't put the end of the 2x6 where the end of the 2x4 was. You want to break those up. It'll increase the overall strength of the whole structure. And then just like you did with the 2x4s, you're going to work your way all the way around the room until you have a continuous ledge. Another little nugget of information that I think is important here is not only am I screwing up into the bottom side of the 2x4, but I'm also using a technique called toe nailing, which is essentially driving the screw in at a very steep angle to hold those two pieces from pulling away from each other over time. Once you've successfully worked your way around the room, you should have a ledge that looks something like this. You can go ahead and grab yourself some more drywall mud, because now that you've created another layer, you're again going to want that to flow in and out from the wall as seamlessly as possible. Now that that was done, I kind of got ahead of myself a little bit Yes, I added the LED lights a little prematurely, but I was excited about it. Now, something that you really want to have is some sort of lip. I'm using a 1 by 2 inch strip of wood that just goes a 1/2 inch over the exposed edge of the 2 by 6 that we added earlier. Now, a 2 by 6 actually measures 1.5 by 5.5, thus giving us that 1/2 inch over the 1.5 measurement. And yes, that can be confusing if you're new to working with lumber. So just like you did with the other layers, you're going to work your way around the room, and I'm using drywall screws to fasten these through the lip and into the exposed edge of the 2 by 6. Once again, you're going to dip into that drywall mud, but this time you're going to be doing corner work. What that means is not only are you going to be spreading mud over the front face of the lip, but you're also going to connect it under the lip to tie it in with the mud that you previously did on the bottom of the 2 by 6. And for this step, you really don't have to put a ton on. You really want a nice, smooth, even layer without globbing on too much material, and you'll see why in just a second. Alright, while that even layer of mud is still tacky, still wet, you can take a piece of PVC corner bead and just press it up against the mud in 8 or 10 foot sections, whatever you're working with. Now, if you're not familiar with corner bead, just go ahead and trust me on this. You're gonna need this to make a nice clean edge. Because making an edge with mud alone, it'll create a sharp edge prone to cracking and chipping, and it's just very, very difficult. So definitely use this stuff. This is the standard. Once you've got that corner bead firmly pressed up against the corner, what you're going to want to do is take more mud and spread that through the perforated holes on the corner bead. And essentially what this is doing is connecting the wet mud underneath it with the new wet mud that you're putting over it, creating a solid core. Now it's time for everybody's favorite part, sanding. Get yourself a nice little sanding block, running it over the bottom and top and outside edges. This is the step where you really want to take your time to make sure that you're getting a nice smooth finish, because any imperfections that you leave there will show through the paint. One thing I forgot to mention in this video so far is the location of the outlet. I actually installed my outlet up in the corner of the room, which I know is a little odd, but it was the best way I could think of not to have a lot of cord hanging out everywhere. If you can't have electrical work done in your room and have to run the cord down the wall, you could hide it with the cord concealing channel. Once you're happy with your sanding job, you're going to move on to painting, and that's going to be your very last step in this process. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope it helps some of you DIYers out there. If you have any other questions, leave them in the comment section. Otherwise, I'll catch you guys for the next project.